Hey guys, how's it going? Trillion, how's it going?
It said order the mocap. So
while we wait.
Now that's interesting. That the paper where you cited is interesting. Demystifying free will, the role of contextual information and evidence of accumulation for predictive brain activity. What regions were they pointing out?
Debate this. I think that the T-jump isn't actually real. It's more of a Cartesian sort of element of his chair.
What are you, in a full-on idealist?
I'm gonna need that in a paper.
He's driving the chair.
I need references.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a few references, like
some sort of outer soul of the chair.
I got you.
Different region looks like. They just cite different studies and they cooperated into this uncorrected proof.
Let me tell you the problem. What the problem is with fMRI?
What is that?
Low resolution.
Yeah, low resolution.
Signal average bullshit. They're all like blood oxygen level dependent activation showed activity outside the patient's head.
What do you want? You want to capture actual synapse transmission, huh? And try to model that shit in MATLAB? Good luck.
We need to get serious, man. We need to go back straight up vivisection on these brains. That's how we forge ahead in science.
You're gonna do some Nazi shit? That's what you want to do to be able to get your answer?
Only with willing volunteers, man. Willing volunteers.
I'll volunteer.
It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna pay the poor people. We just pay the poor people, and we can just use the poor people brains.
Jesus,
that's right.
Well, where's the poor line at?
Whoever accepts the money. Like we offer money, and if they take the money, that's sufficient.
What's the fucking word for it?
How much money are you giving me?
$80 billion, and then as soon as you die, I'm just gonna get it back. So like whatever.
Sweet, I'll do it.
Genius.
I'm gonna see the money first, though.
What is it when it's called like killing a particular class of people again? There's a name for that.
Eugenics.
Is it eugenics? It's like it's like eugenics with more steps. T-jump.
I don't think so, because eugenics is like with the goal of eliminating a population. But if the goal is scientific experimentation and you just offer people money to experiment on them, that isn't technically eugenics.
They can't, I mean, the kind of research we're talking, they're not going to be able to spend this money, I promise you. Are we giving it to their families?
We're going to have lengthy contracts that no one can understand. That means if they don't live past the experiment, they don't get the money.
So you get the money now and you read this later, and good luck.
No, they don't get the money now. So it's like
they don't get the money now.
They say if we do the experiment and they survive in 10 years, they'll be paid in increments of once a year for the next 10 years, but they're going to die anyway. So.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, now that you told me that, I mean, I don't volunteer now. I don't volunteer. Like, this is like, give me the money up front, I'll volunteer.
Well, they're going to think they're going to get the money up front because they're not going to be able to understand all the legal terminology of the contract. So when they sign it, it's too late.
This is Unit 731 with more steps. Actually, with less. No, it's more steps.
Yeah, it does sound like that.
This is like, I feel like I brought this up, but I feel like T-Jump is really keeping the trains running on time, if you know what I mean.
think that's how it normally goes. Just people bring stuff up and then I just make it work.
Sounds like there's some kind of a solution. There's got to be finality there.
Yeah.
So
Version.
Yeah.
We'll call it the complete solution.
So Wheels, I want to push this to you. If you had like, I don't know, like an immortal being that had all the features of a human and you could like study it, but it had to feel all the pain and stuff, would you still go forward and do these things, like try to study its brain and its functionality, knowing that it could like Wolverine heal overnight?
Nah.
No?
I think it depends on who. Like maybe if it was like strong atheist, he might do it anyway.
Damn.
Oh, yes.
I haven't been
thought
kind
he
to
was
strong
gonna
today, so I gotta take it easy on him.
I thought he was
Or
going
the
to say something
atheist.
like Hitler, but he just pulls that out of his pocket.
You know, really reprehensible. You know, like, I don't know, strong atheist or something. Someone who sells mattresses.
Casually throwing out fire.
I'm
Real
a strong
degenerate.
atheist. I'm a strong atheist. Is that what you mean? Don't do that.
No, but if you are a strong atheist, I'd love to see you and Strong in the same room, like seeing what you agree on and don't agree on. Be interesting.
Try everything and nothing.
Hmm.
That depends. That depends. Depends on what's brought on the table.
Then it's going to go to politics instead of religion.
Yeah, that's.
I just
and
really-
that's
I just really think that there are certain problems that we'll never solve philosophically, and the best we can do is a sort of a relinquishing of that fact, and then just to go about whatever our senses tell us, and do the best we can. Do the best we can, and do the science and shit. But what the fuck else can we do?
Do the science and shit. Yes.
He's not
Yeah,
wrong.
I ain't got much time. I gotta go.
Not
And I got a dog licking me in the face.
Should do the science and shit though. He's not wrong.
Who should?
So-
Do as much of the science you can without cracking open anyone's head.
So Wheels, if you were like the what's his name? If you were like the world dictator or something, would you make science learning compulsory or no?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, actually,
so.
I would pull all barriers out. I'd pull away all barriers, and it would be infringing on people's will in terms of how they were funding it. But yeah, I would remove as many barriers as possible.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter like how unethical the experiments can be. Just like go for it.
No, this is learning.
Oh, no,
This is,
education.
Oh, okay.
Education is saying. Not cracking people open.
so like how kids have to pray before they sleep in certain countries, you would like make them memorize the periodic table and shit.
That would be pointless.
Yeah, everyone would have math knowledge. I'd build up everybody's knowledge of math. Actually, English education is the literature shows is the most effective in terms of just indoctrinating people with English. They learn everything else quicker. So it'd be start like that. If there'd be more compulsory formal education, if I was actual dictator, I'd be the most benign dictator ever.
God, I hate school.
See, that's what
I
you'd
forgot
have
half the
to
stuff
do.
they teach me.
We got to fix that attitude.
Sly would be like considered a enemy of the state. He'd be like a terrorist. You realize that?
Just be like, yeah, for real.
I think the way we should teach
Just start a
science is
rebellion.
like there's that one channel who does chemistry and he turned plastic gloves into hot sauce. Like that is the correct way to teach science.
Yeah, just not teach the same boring things over and over again. Like I loved science and stuff, English too, but like math, when they just teach you the same thing every year, it just gets so you get burnt out on it.
Well, you kind of have to because people don't remember it. They forget like
Yeah.
70% or whatever.
Yeah, when you go on summer vacation, it's all gone.
Yep. I think only up to algebra is required, and then after that, literally none of it is used for 90% of jobs.
I think they should just like teach you the college level stuff when you're like actually going into something that requires the above algebra type of math. But when you're like in high school or whatever, I think it's dumb to teach that stuff. At least for a requirement.
I think we should teach more things that are actually required for life, like how to balance a
Yeah, like how to
checkbook.
pay your bills.
How to
How
do
to
your
get-
fucking tax.
Well, that taxes should just be done by the government anyway. But I would say that things like how to be healthy, dieting, exercise, how to not be people who just collect a bunch of garbage for no reason, clutter. Forget what they're called.
A hoarder.
That's what
Hoarders.
Michelle
Yeah,
Obama's for.
hoarder.
Yes. So we need to create like a system of this is how much sentimental crap you're supposed to keep, and if you have more than this, you should throw it away. So we don't get like boxes and tons of furniture of just garbage sentimental crap in our grandparents' house for no reason.
Well, a whole bunch of moral lessons, like
Yes.
maybe you should stay away from
T-jumps.
drugs and stuff.
Well, that's not moral. T-jumps morality for every school for sure. How to raise a kid, how to start a business and to make it successful. Basic economic skills, where to find easy money. So like easy money in the economy would be like extremely valuable for people to find, like plasma donation, poo donation, different ways to get money easily for little effort. How to find the cheapest ways to do stuff.
But that
Not
would be
get
like a
ripped off.
dynamic process, though, because like if everybody's learning that how to do that in a compulsory way, and everyone has that information, then everybody would be going after those easy way to
Yep.
make money kind of things, and then eventually they wouldn't be as easy, right? So then that would always be like a dynamic field.
Well, yeah, like it's the same as in everything in school. You learn one thing, and then like biology classes have changed quite a bit over the past 100 years. So yes, the courses will update based on the culture. So like we'd be teaching different cultures different things because of where it is to get easy money or how to run a business changes based off the culture you're in. So it's going to be contingent on the environment that you're a part of.
Mhm.
I feel like society would be so much better if we taught those things.
Yes.
I'd be living life instead of learning the Pythagorean theorem.
Well, sort of. So there's an argument that indoctrination is good for the economy. So having a bunch of slaves do a bunch of work for you because they've been trained to do nothing else and have no idea how to manage money, and so they're perpetually in need of money, makes them very good at, or makes them required to be workers. So like in previous cultures, hundreds of years ago, you used to be able to work until you had enough money for the year and then just stop working. Like I got enough money, I don't need to do shit. I'm just done with working for the rest of the year. And that's a good way to do it. That's just kind of the way I do it. But in today's society, because of the debt traps and people don't know how to manage money and finances, they're perpetually in need of money, and so they have to continually work. And that's economically a good thing because it keeps people in the global market, which benefits the country, even though it doesn't benefit the people.
That sounds straight up depressing. Like even though it like works both ways, it's both good and bad.
Yes.
Like I don't even know, like I guess like ethically it'd be good to like teach people all their skills, but like at the same time, like I don't even know how you'd be able to fix that problem.
Which problem?
It's kind of a dilemma.
Fix which
Well,
problem?
where you have people constantly working.
Oh, well, that's easy. Like we've never needed that for most of human history. Like there's no reason to have people constantly working. Most of the work can get done in much less time than is what is required.
Is that a problem of scale though? Like once you get to a certain scale, then maintenance of that scale, wouldn't that require this constant work?
No, like you can separate it out between, like if you separate work that is required for 10 people in, let's say 100 years could be separated out to 10 people, one every 10 years. Hey Walter, how's it going? I got a show, guys. I'm gonna talk to you guys later.
All's well. Sorry, my computer wasn't working as well as it could have been. I'm glad I got you.
Cool. Yeah, glad to see you. How are you?
Hang in there. How are you?
Pretty good. I was just chatting with my friends on Discord. I'm already live because we started a little late. That's all right. Just so you know, don't say anything compromising like you're actually like a liberal or something.
Well, I'm a libertarian.
Yeah. So everything looks good on my end. I can see you and hear you clearly. I am ready to go if you are.
Ready to go. Great.
Cool. Walter, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Well, I'm a professor of economics at Loyola University, New Orleans. I have to say New Orleans because there are 4 Loyola universities, one in Chicago, Maryland, and California, and also in Louisiana. And I've been a libertarian since, 1964 or so. And I've been writing up a storm and trying to promote liberty to the best of my capacity.
Awesome. So I sort of agree with the non-aggression principle. I think that the most moral world would be one where it would be impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. That's my moral principle. And I take it a little farther than the non-aggression principle. I think the laws of physics shouldn't be able to force you to do things you don't consent to as well. But the reason I'm not a libertarian is because I think that there are many good things, good actions that can be promoted or discouraged through laws that are beneficial to a society, even though they might be immoral to force people to do it. And so I think laws are a good way to encourage and discourage these actions, and they work effectively, not with 100%, but they do increase the rate or decrease the rate at a population will do or won't do a certain action. And therefore, having laws that are enforced by force, the government, is a good thing in order to encourage and discourage these laws. And I think that metric is a more efficient way to get people to do or not do certain actions at a faster rate than simply laissez-faire capitalism.
Well, they say the devil is in the details. So could you give me an example of where a law that compels people to do things or prohibits them from doing things that they have a right to do or not a right to do would help society?
Sure, all of religion, the entire thing, religion. Some of the examples are that they encourage certain actions like don't eat shellfish, don't eat pork or whatever. And in those time periods, eating pork was unhealthy because of bacteria, which they didn't know about. And so it caused them to act in such a way which they were not exposed to bacteria, which then saved more lives. And these laws, while they were arbitrary and evil, forcing people to do things under threat of violence, of going to hell or whatever, actually had a benefit in society that they would cause people to not act in a certain way which was detrimental to them, that even though they were unaware of it.
Well, that's fascinating. I really like that example. Let's take the case of eating pork when it created trichinosis, I guess would be the disease. And there were laws that compelled I guess Muslimism and Judaism, those are the main 2 that don't eat pork. I think Christians eat pork, right?
Yeah.
So we would have a law saying you must be a Muslim or you must be Jewish, and not a Reform Jew who eats pork, but an Orthodox Jew who doesn't eat pork. And unbeknownst to the rulers, this would have good effects because it would save lives, whatever. Well, that's an excellent point. I've never heard that, and I've been in this field for many, many years, so I'm very grateful to you for that. It'll make me think a little bit. But right off the top of my head, and why haven't you published this before, you rotten kid? This is a great idea. So I'm criticizing you for not publicizing this. This is a very interesting idea. I think just at first glance, yes, you're right. We would have saved lives by violating libertarian principles. On the other hand, we also lost lives by violating libertarian principles because religion is, there were religious wars. And now it's an empirical issue as to, well, how many people were saved because they didn't eat pork versus how many people were killed because of religious wars and religious, all sorts of other, inquisitions and all sorts of mishigas, as we say in Yiddish, craziness. And I think I could maybe make a case. I haven't thought about this, so this is right off the top of my head. But I think one could make a case that in this example, more people died because of this than were saved. And if so, we now don't have yet a good example. So try either buttress that one or give me another example.
Well, actually, so this would be the next follow-up stage of my argument, is that I think that we can make an argument that overall, the positive effects of these rules created by religion have actually had a hugely beneficial effect, which is why they're so successful in the world. I think from an evolutionary standpoint, the reason we have these predispositions of being religious, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in a God, but I can recognize that religious people have created these laws and these systems essentially arbitrarily. They make up a bunch of random rules. They have no idea what they work. But the ones who create rules that are beneficial end up thriving and growing in their societies, essentially as a laissez-faire capitalist, take over the rest of them because they're more efficient. And so because we are designed evolutionarily to be open to these kinds of ideas, the ones that do have positive impacts grow exponentially throughout our society and create tons and tons of positive impacts for everyone around the world, which is why religion grows. And so I think there is an argument to be made that even in that one example, that eating pork may not be a greater positive than negative impact. The collection of religion in itself is. So of all the random laws that they insert, the collection of the laws creates a positive impact that saves more lives than it costs, even if we include all of the wars and things, because it encourages actions of millions and millions of people around the world to act in a way that builds more cohesive societies, has a moral groundwork, because even if it's just because they're afraid of going to hell, and acts in a way that's more moral than tyrants normally would if they get in power. If they're Christian, they tend to be less, on average, less tyrannical. And so it seems like overall the impact of religion has created a greater benefit because of these laws than the detriment that it also incurs, which I agree there is one.
Well, it's sort of, we're now having a utilitarian argument, namely which way does it sway? And it's really an empirical issue. And I can see the pork. I see pork very clearly, and it's a very good example. But I see the stuff, that if you're religious, you should honor your parents, and probably honoring your parents is on net benefit a good thing. And there are other cohesive things about it. So I'm giving you some credit for your very insightful point. On the other hand, there's so many religious wars, and 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis because they were Jewish, which is a problem for your thesis. I don't know how many people are saved by pork, but we got 6 million there, and there are many, many other religious wars, the Crusades, the Inquisition. Although it's interesting about the Inquisition. A lot of people think the Inquisition, killed masses of people, but my understanding is the Inquisition only killed about 3,000 to 5,000 people over around 4 centuries or something like that. I don't have the exact numbers to hand, but it wasn't that bad. But on the other hand, a lot of wars had religious implications, even though they weren't religious wars. I don't know about World War I. I'm not historian enough to know how much religion played into wars, but look, why don't we go on to the next point? Because I think, I'll say yes, yes, and you'll say no, no. And, I'll say no. There were more people killed by religious wars than the help, and you'll say the opposite. So I don't know how we can resolve that or solve that. So could you give me another example of anti-libertarian laws benefit humanity?
Oh, sure. I do want to mention that I think that I agree that as an empirical question, has religion had more of a benefit than a detriment in society? And I think that's a very well-studied thing. There's tons of empirical studies on that. And I think there's a heavy leaning in the favor that it has made a positive impact, kind of like weapons. Like weapons have had a negative impact in a lot of ways, but they've also had a lot of positive impacts. So like bows and arrows being used for hunting has saved more lives than they've killed through war. Same with guns, and nuclear weapons have saved more lives through providing nuclear power than have through war. And so I think religion as a technology has provided more benefit to more people's lives and increased the quality of people's lives more than the small amount by comparison that have been killed through religious war. But if you like a different example, or go ahead.
Well, let me just correct you, if I may, a friendly amendment. What we're discussing now is not whether religion has had a positive or negative net effect, but rather compulsory religion. Because there's nothing incompatible with libertarianism and good old religion, right? So it's compulsory religion that you have to defend. I'm not allowing you to get away with defending just good old ordinary religion, which is not compulsory. It's the compulsoriness that you have to defend. And I don't think you can make a good case because, as you say, I'm using your words against you now. Sociobiologically, we are hardwired toward being receptive to religion. So we would have religion anyway, even without compulsion. So you have to say that the compulsion was beneficial, not just religion.
Yes.
So even if I conceded that religion was beneficial, you haven't won this discussion, so to speak. You have to prove compulsory religion, and I don't see how you're going to do that.
Oh, well, that would be hell, like the entire concept of hell.
Oh, no. That's not compulsion. Look, if you wear glasses, you're going to hell. Let's say, I don't think that's true. I wear glasses myself. That's not a threat. That's a warning. Don't wear glasses. Or if you wear a black shirt, we're both wearing dark shirts. You wear dark shirts, you're going to hell. That's my opinion. I'm a scientist. I'm a social scientist. I've made studies, and I've determined that. That's not compulsion. I'm just warning you. I'm a nice guy. I'm trying to help you stay out of hell.
Well, if for example, God has created hell, and God says you go to hell if you don't, or you do X amount of actions. I don't see how that's any different than a government creating a jail or a prison and saying, if you don't or do these actions, we're going to send you to the prison. To me, those seem to be synonymous levels of compulsion.
Oh, no. I see them as polar opposites. Look, you just came out with a movie or a book, and I wrote a critical review of it, and I said you're a crappy movie theorist or a movie star or whatever it is. That's not violence. That's not incompatible with libertarianism. And I now say you're going to hell because you're wearing a dark shirt. That libertarian allows that.
Oh, right. If you're just describing some state of affairs, that wouldn't be you doing the imposition. But if God created hell and God created the system of how to get there, that's slightly different from just describing the state of affairs.
Look, I'm the Reverend Doc Block. And as the Reverend Doc Block, I say you're going to hell because you're wearing a dark shirt.
Yes.
I didn't violate your rights, at least the way I understand libertarianism. I mean, I'm a little crazy for saying that. And you understand I'm not seriously saying that, but I'm now a theologian, and I say anyone who wears a dark shirt, namely you and I, we're both going to go to hell, and we'll have great discussions in hell because we'll both be there because we're both wearing dark shirts. But that's not a violation of rights.
Well, that's interesting. So, like, threats of violating your rights, even if you have no intention of doing them, would not be a violation of libertarianism. Like if I said, if you don't go plow my field, I'll shoot you. Even if I won't do it, you don't know that. That wouldn't be a violation?
Oh, that would be. That's a threat. But I'm just doing a prediction. I tell you, as a theologian, eminent theologian, I've got a degree in this. You wear a dark shirt, you're going to hell. That's not a threat. That's a prediction. I'm not putting you in hell. God's going to do it, right? Or the devil or somebody's going to do it. I'm also an atheist, so, I don't believe in any of this stuff either. But I regard that as a prediction, not a threat. Whereas if I come up to you with a gun and I say, unless you plow the field, I'm shooting you. Oh boy, that's a threat.
I don't see the difference there. Like if I'm a representative of the guy, let's say there's a guy who says, plow my fields or I'm going to shoot you. And I'm a representative of him. I'm saying, by the way, like if you don't plow these fields, some other guy is going to come and shoot you, but I'm not him. I don't see how that's any different.
Now we have sort of a continuum here or a slippery slope. If you say that I'm not going to shoot you, but those guys over that hill who will shoot you.
Yeah.
It depends upon the context. I mean, it could be a prediction and it could be a threat. It's sort of a continuum. And I'm not clear to say, oh, no, that's not a threat or it is a threat. It's very gray area-ish. But let's forget about this gray area stuff. Let me take my perspective. And now I'm just predicting. God is going to put both of us in the hell because we're wearing a dark shirt. It's my prediction. That's not a threat. It's God schmod. God's never done anything like this. We as atheists will agree. Whereas people have been shot for not plowing fields. So yes, libertarianism says don't initiate violence against innocent people, and or if you do, you get punished, and also threat. But I guess we'll have to agree to disagree to interpret what religion is saying. Are they threatening, or are they? I mean, the Inquisition was not threatening God; they were threatening, you don't do this, and we're going to kick your butt. So I guess we'll have to agree to disagree as to whether religion is a threat or a prediction.
Yeah, to me it seems like I'm not sure if that matters, because the argument here is, are you being forced to do something or threatened with a punishment for doing something you should have the right to do, like eat pork, for example. And to me it seems like religion is doing that, whether the threat is that there are many religions who say God will smote you, or God will send a hurricane to kill you, or whatever. Those seem like a threat from God. Like if I'm just reading, because I've read the Bible and the Quran and the Old Testament, it seems very much like a threat. If you don't do this, I'm going to flood the planet.
No, it's a threat from God, but
Yeah.
You're not threatening. I'm not threatening you. God, look, I tell you, Tom, that if you continue wearing dark shirts, you're going to hell, and you'll die a painful death, and then you're going to hell. God is threatening you, and I'm just telling you this. I'm not going to do anything to you.
Well, my point here is that having someone to give the threats, suppose God was real or something, if God was real and he gave these threats, they would still be beneficial. So if God literally said, I threaten you to flood the planet, and so don't eat pork or don't use mixed fabrics or whatever, he is now violating your libertarian consent by threatening you to do something you should have the right to do. And he's going to punish you. He's going to send you to hell or whatever. But even so, this was still beneficial for society because it caused a bunch of actions that encouraged or discouraged people from doing things that may have been harmful for them. So even if God existed, even if he violated libertarian consent by actually threatening you, it was still a good thing because it produced all of the benefits of religion.
Well, I think we're reaching diminishing returns on this one. I'll let you have the last substantive word on that. Do you want to give me another? Let me reply in a different way. The Martians, they're all powerful. They're nasty, and they say that unless we kill the next guy that walked down the street, they're going to blow up the whole world, kill us all. Well, here is a divergence. I'm trying to help you on your side of this. Here is a divergence between what we consider broadly speaking utilitarianism, which means the planet doesn't get blown up, and libertarian theory, which says don't kill innocent Joe. Okay, so now what we do is I go and kill innocent Joe. Why do I do it? Because I want to save the planet. I'm a different kind of a killer. I mean, most killers are nasty people, but I'm a good guy, so I kill Joe. And then libertarianism really never doesn't say don't kill Joe. It just says if you kill Joe, you're a murderer and we're going to punish you. So now I just killed Joe, and society comes along and says, well, we're going to execute you because you murdered Joe. First, we're going to give you a ticker tape parade because you're a hero. You saved the planet, but now we have to kill you. And guess what the Martians say? The Martians say that if you follow libertarianism, we're blowing up the whole world. So that's another example on your side.
Yeah.
But notice how convoluted we have to go. Another favorite one of mine is the the Libertarian concentration camp guard. So here's the way the Nazi concentration camp works. Every guy who's a soldier or a jailer in the concentration camp has to kill 100 innocent people. So I go in, I'm a libertarian, and what I do is I only kill 90. Why do I kill 90? Because if I kill 89, they'll catch me. They'll realize that I'm sloughing off. But if I kill 90, they'll say, okay, Walter, you had a bad day, but what the heck? And now a week later, and I killed 7 times 90, 630 people, but I saved 70, 10 a day. And now I'm in the Nuremberg, Nuremberg trials. Yes, and they're saying, hey, Walter, you killed 630 people. You're a rotten kid. And I say, true, but I did it in order to save 70. And I wish I could have saved your cousin, your brother. I just did it at random. I just saved 10 people. I didn't know who I was saving. And my libertarian analysis of that is, first of all, I'm a hero. You got to give me that ticker tape parade as you did when I killed the innocent Joe, because of the Martians. And now what I do is I plead with the 630 people. I say, look, I wish I could have saved your family member, but I did my best. So please let me go. But if any one of them says, tut, 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 you killed my uncle, we're going to get you, he would be right. So I'm a real hero. And I agree with you. There is a diversion between, I never thought of the trichinosis thing, but I've thought of the Martian, and I've thought of the Libertarian, and I've written about the Libertarian Nazi concentration camp guard, which sounds a little bit like a contradiction. So I admit that, yes, you can violate libertarianism and be, broadly speaking, utilitarian. But you really have to push. You have to invent Martians, or you have to invent weird concentration camp guards, or you have to talk about trichinosis, but or something like that, or the good civilizing effects of religion. But I think that, again, we're getting to an empirical issue. How many Martians are there? Not too many. How many libertarian concentration camps are there? Not too many. The trichinosis, I think you have a better shot. There are more trichinosis saved, but again, again, we're still on the same point.
Yep.
Namely, it's an empirical issue. Well, how many religious wars? And again, it's not religion; it's compulsory religion.
Yep.
That you have to defend.
Yeah, just to be clear, I think the Abrahamic religions are compulsory. That's based on my interpretation. But yes, I totally agree. I think that the reason I'm using these more extreme examples is because I want to lead into the more common examples. So I think that I agree that utilitarianism is more important than libertarianism. If there is a greater consequence for doing an evil thing, it could be good to do the evil thing, like trolley problem. Should you kill one to save five? Yes, it's immoral. You have killed one. You are responsible for killing the one, but you did save five. And so I agree with everything you said there, that you're a hero for saving the five, but you did kill the one, and you're responsible for that. But I think that the vast majority of cases, when we look at the world, are kind of like that. So I think all laws are essentially, you're doing a bad thing and putting people in prison to have a better consequence. And that's the goal of the law. And I think that many of them do have this effect. Taxation is an example. I think taxation is an example of a bad thing, where you take money from a lot of people to protect them from other militaries who are going to potentially Nazify you. So I think taxation is an example of a good law. Laws against alcoholism, drunk driving. The safest place in the world for driving is Sweden. Sweden has the lowest levels of drunk driving incidents because of laws that have extremely harsh litigation for drunk driving, and they have very heavy taxation on alcohol, and alcohol can only be sold by government instituted companies who close on like moderate lately at night, so you can't drive drunk. Essentially impossible. Totally worked. They have the lowest level of drunk driving anywhere in the world. Very successful. Cigarettes, another one. Companies make laws to put them in green, ugly boxes and put diseases and pictures on the front. And we can look at the data and show, yep, this works at decreasing the rate of cigarette smoking and thus saving lives. So I think all laws follow that same utilitarian principle. We're trying to impose a restriction which is immoral to provide to prevent a worse restriction that would happen if we didn't do this. And so I think that most laws do have this positive effect of having a utilitarian consequence, but a greater benefit than the consequence that they invoke.
Okay, I hear you, and this is not totally unreasonable. I disagree with it, but it's coherent and it's a rational point. I would just quarrel, first of all, with drunken driving. That's a threat. If you drive while you're drunk, you're a threat. And remember, libertarianism prescribes not only hitting people with your car, but also threatening to do so. And I can easily interpret drunken driving as a threat. So forget about drunken driving. Let's just talk about alcohol, the prohibition. What you're now saying is that prohibition was a good thing, even though it was against libertarian rules, because it saved a lot of cirrhosis of the liver or whatever else that drunken people do. They beat up their wives or whatever. Well, I think that I have a pretty good argument against you, namely that We had a lot of people being killed in what do you call it, wars. The mafia was always shooting each other over prohibition. And now take drugs, heroin and cocaine. It's the same thing. Only now, instead of Italian people shooting each other, it's mainly black people. I'm not sure why one is Italian, one's black, why it's not the reverse. But the point is that if you want to defend alcohol prohibition and the drug laws, I think you're on a weak argument, because I think it's very easy to say that on net basis, what do you call it? These laws are very bad. They kill a lot of people. There's a lot of. I'm from New Orleans. I'm a professor in New Orleans, and there are young black men shooting each other every weekend and hitting innocent people, and they're fighting over drug turf. Well, nowadays there's nobody fighting over alcohol. You want alcohol, you go to the store and you buy alcohol. If we and Oregon, a lefty place, has just legalized cocaine. And I think that's great. So I have to quarrel with your view that that drug and alcohol prohibitions are of net benefit. And as for the what do you call it? Motor vehicle deaths due to drugged or drunken driving, it doesn't matter. One of my books is why we should privatize highways. And the problem is that we have taxes that go for government highways. And if we had private highways, we'd save a lot more people. In the US, some 40,000 people a year die on the roads. And I think, maybe 30,000 of those lives could have been saved if we had private roads. And if we had private roads, we wouldn't need taxes for them. So I would have to disagree with you.
All right. So the first point was, I don't see any gang wars in Sweden over alcohol. That's not a thing I've heard of. They have very strict prohibition. You can still drink. It's not like literally a ban, but they have alcohol can only be sold by government-owned facilities, and the government-owned facilities shut down at night. You can't buy alcohol at night anywhere in the country. And they have very strict anti-drunk driving laws, and these work. They have a success rate. They have the least drunk driving deaths anywhere in the world, the best. And these are based on forced prohibitions by the government. So they impose a negative consequence, but it has a much greater positive consequence on the society. There's no gangs of alcoholists selling alcohol illegally here. So I don't think the analogy to prohibition works, because they don't have this problem. And most countries who have laws against drunk driving and who have prohibitions against alcohol don't have that problem. America did, because America's stupid and they do a lot of stupid things. But in Sweden and the countries that I'm referencing here, they don't have that problem. So I don't think that criticism works here. They have very successful laws and prohibitions that don't have those consequences that you're outlining, and they do have the benefits of causing less deaths.
Well, I spent half a year in Canada. My wife lives in Canada. Canada has the same thing. You want to buy booze, you go to a government store, because there are no private stores and there are no gangs in Canada. So Canada is similar to Sweden in that regard. But you don't have ceteris paribus. You don't have controlled experiment. What you really need is Sweden and Norway. And let's suppose that the Swedes and the Norwegians are the same. Assume that. And one of them had this and one of them had that. Then we could maybe make a better assessment of the benefits. But again, forget about drunken driving, because drunken driving can easily be interpreted as a threat, and libertarians are against that. So libertarians would not have a problem with prohibition of drunken driving. Now let's just talk about drinking. Okay, so in Sweden, you have the present Swedish law, and in Norway, let's suppose that the Norwegians are indistinguishable from the Swedes, similar, kind of people. And there you didn't have that. Well, I don't know, maybe other negative implications. I don't know.
Fetal alcohol syndrome.
Fetal alcohol syndrome is very bad. And if you drink, especially pregnant women. But do the Swedes have rules against women who are pregnant drinking?
I assume so. But the reason I bring this up is that, for example, the Muslim world just outright bans alcohol. And they have some of the lowest rates of fetal alcohol syndrome of anywhere in the world, because they just ban alcohol. And if you do it, you go to prison and hell, both of those things. And so it seems like countries that do this, and they have lots of other terrible, terrible things. It's not a promotion of Islamic society. But in this case where they have this compulsory law, which is a threat of violence, it works. It has a positive outcome that there's essentially no fetal alcohol syndrome in Islam. And so if we compare that to other Islamic countries or other countries nearby, Hindu countries or something that do allow alcohol syndrome, they have a much higher rate of fetal alcohol syndrome. So to try and use when you asked for an example of one society that has a law next to another that doesn't have a law, this would be an example of that.
Well, I think that's a very good point. But now we're getting back to trichinosis. I mean, fetal alcohol syndrome is an analog of trichinosis.
Yes.
And we've already discussed trichinosis, and now we're just discussing it in a different way. I certainly will concede to you that in Muslim countries, where you don't have any of this, but again, you can't get away with just defending Muslims. You have to defend compulsory Muslimism. Suppose there was no compulsory, and there is compulsory Muslimism. If you're in one of these Muslim countries and you convert to Judaism or to atheism, off with your head.
Yeah.
So forget about, I mean, that's what you have to defend. Now, suppose we take that away from the equation and we just say, let's have voluntary Muslimism. Well, I think voluntary Muslimism would also stop the fetal alcohol syndrome and also stop the trichinosis, and it would be compatible with libertarianism.
I'm not sure I would agree there, because if we go to American countries where it is essentially voluntary Muslimism, there is a much higher rate of fecal alcohol syndrome than the countries that have compulsory Islam.
Among Muslims in the U.S., they have higher fetal alcohol syndrome than Muslims in places where there's compulsory Muslimism?
Yes, in places where they're more liberal Muslims or moderate Muslims, they don't take as much of the doctrine as literally, and they're not punished by the government for doing so, and so they more often drink and more often don't adhere to the rules of the country or the rules of Islam.
Well, look, I don't know that that's true, but let's stipulate that is true. There are places in Michigan, I think, where you have a lot of Muslim people. And there's no compulsory Muslimism in Michigan. You don't get your head cut off if you, by the government anyway. You might get your head cut off by other people. I don't know. Well, if this is true, that the voluntary Muslimism has higher fetal alcohol syndrome than compulsory Muslimism, that's a point on your side. And I'm happy to concede that. Okay, so we'll have less fetal alcohol syndrome if we have voluntary Muslimism than if we have compulsory. If that's true, I don't know that it is true, but let's stipulate. Look, if we can talk about Martians, or we can talk about weird concentration camps, we can certainly talk about that. And I'll concede that we'll have less fetal alcohol syndrome, and fetal alcohol syndrome is a bad thing.
Yeah, well, the reason, like you mentioned, this was like the trichinosis example, and you're exactly right. This is exactly like the trichinosis example. And the reason I'm bringing these up is because I can move more and more examples that are exactly like these, where it's an empirical question. This is a utilitarian question. Does imposing this law, which is bad, we're forcing you to do something under the threat of violence, have a better positive outcome because it saves us from a greater negative thing than if we didn't impose this negative law? And I think the vast majority of good laws do that. I think it's not just in the case of pork and trichinosis or fetal alcohol syndrome or cigarettes or alcohol drunk driving. I recognize that you said in libertarianism you're against drunk driving, and that's cool. I'm totally for that. And so all of these examples of these laws are doing exactly that. Another example would be what are they called? The laws against not being able to turn away African Americans, prejudice laws. I think that's another example. So we can say, if a country forces its employers to take business from African Americans, that would have, even though it's compulsory that we're forcing you to do that, it has a better impact on the economy because it produces more economic growth of this group of people, allowing them to function in the economy. So this would be another example of forcing people to do something under the threat of law that has a greater benefit, which is that it improves the quality of life and success of the economy because it gives a large portion of people more access to the economy and allowing it to grow.
Okay, that's an interesting example, namely non-discrimination laws, and not just based on race, based on sex, based on age, based on
religion,
based on, this case of the cake guy, where the gays wanted the baker to bake a cake that was had two men on the top of the cake. And what you're saying is that that's a good law.
Well, I think he won that case, so I don't think he did. He don't think he violated any laws there, because it's not. He has to make a cake, but he doesn't have to decorate it any particular way because he's an artist. I think he was not wrong in that case.
Well, I think he was not found wrong, but if we want to generalize your point about discrimination, what we have to say is, the hell with this autistic crap. That was his view. That was his defense, namely, I'm an artist, so I can't put two men on it. But that's discrimination. What kind of an artist can't put two men on top of the cake?
I agree. So I just want to clarify. I don't mean that we should do zero discrimination ever for anything. Obviously not. But there is a certain kind of discrimination that we can make laws against, and if we make laws against this kind of discrimination, it can be beneficial to the economy. So if we allow people to buy, as long as people can buy cakes from him, I don't care what art he puts on them, who cares about that? Or we allow African Americans to eat and get loans from banks or whatever, that kind of discrimination is good to put laws that we must enforce them, because it has a huge benefit to economic success of the country by allowing a large group of people to participate in the economy. Now, obviously, forcing them to paint a particular picture would not be the kind of discrimination that this benefit would be seen in. So the kind of discrimination I'm saying it's okay to make laws for is only the kind that has this massive economic impact that would be beneficial for society as a whole, not literally all discrimination.
Okay. Let me just ask you about your own background. Are you an economist or a political theoretician, or what schooling have you had?
I audited classes, so I have no degrees at all because I started my own business, and I've just been running my own business for 5 years, and that's what I do. So I specialize in philosophy, epistemology, and morality. Those are the focuses of my education.
Okay. Are you familiar with the work of Gary Becker, Thomas Sowell, and Walter Williams?
Thomas Sowell, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell.
No, you're not.
Well, I can be a fan and not agree with him, so I don't necessarily.
Okay, fair enough. I stand corrected. But you certainly have a different view than he and Becker and Williams and me and many economists, although not most economists. What most economists would say is that discrimination, you have to pay for discrimination, and the market weeds out the discrimination. And for example, let's suppose that we don't want to hire black people because their pigmentation is too dark or something like that. Well, the immediate effect of that is the demand, and whites outnumber blacks in the country. Blacks are 15% or 13%, something like that. And the 77% or 87%, my math is a little off, we just don't want to hire blacks because, their pigmentation is too dark. Well, the immediate effect of that is the demand curve for their labor shifts to the left, if I can use economic jargon, and their wages fall. But their productivity is the same. Just because we're a bunch of idiots doesn't mean that their productivity changed. Productivity is the same, but their wages fall. And now they become a target for everyone who wants to maximize profits to start hiring them. Because you can make more profit by hiring a black person than a white person, because the black people's wages are artificially falling. Namely, what I learned from economics is that these discriminatory behaviors are impotent to hurt blacks. And the same thing with women. Let's say we decide that we men are in power and we're in control, and we decide the women are no good and we don't want to hire them, although most heterosexual men that I know don't take that view. But let's suppose we took that view. Well, now all of a sudden women are being underpaid, and you can make more profits by hiring a woman, which undermines this. So these sorts of things are pretty impotent. Not perfectly impotent, but pretty impotent. And so you don't really need laws telling you can't discriminate against blacks or women or gays or aged people or whoever it is, because economics works in such a way as to protect the targets of discrimination. So you don't really need it. And if you have it, it has all sorts of negative repercussions. Because if you only want to have a certain amount of discrimination, but if you take this to its logical conclusion, heterosexuals are evil, because they discriminate against half the human race. Homosexuals are evil because they discriminate against half the human race in terms of romantic bed partners, whatever. The only rational people or the only moral people are bisexuals. So we can now make a case for compulsory bisexuality. That's where it's true. It's a slippery slope, but I think that's where you're headed if you take that view.
I don't think so.
To me, well,
because the justification for my laws here is that it has a huge benefit economically. Like, obviously it's an arbitrary line. I'm not saying that discrimination is bad. I don't care about the bad here. I'm saying certain kinds of discrimination are detrimental economically. And heterosexuals and homosexuals, I don't see any economic detriment to that kind of discrimination. So it just literally wouldn't apply. Because my argument here isn't that discrimination is bad. It's that some kinds of discrimination have a negative effect on the economy. Therefore, it's justified for us to litigate against that kind of discrimination. I'm not saying the discrimination is bad. I'm not saying we should like make them immoral or put them in prison because of discrimination. I'm saying that the discrimination has negative consequences and therefore we should litigate the discrimination, not that we should just stop all discrimination. So there's no analogy there between heterosexuals. And the second reason that I partially agree and partially don't with your analysis of how economics can lead to filtering out this kind of discrimination, I think the first problem is that it takes more time. It takes more time to filter out this discrimination when you do it in a laissez-faire capitalistic way, as opposed to just litigate it and say, nope, everyone has to do it everywhere in the country. Boom, problem solved. And the second is that it's not always true that it will happen because of cultural differences in the society. So, for example, in South Africa, when white farmers' land was taken away from them, if a black farmer who owned the land gave it back and just said, here, you guys know what you're doing, I have no idea what I'm doing, he would be discriminated against. The black farmer who now owns the land and gave it back would be discriminated against because the people in the culture don't like the fact that a white farmer owns it. And so they won't give him money, even though he's effectively doing a better job and paying his workers at a lower rate. So he could in potential make a higher level of profit. If nobody buys his goods because they don't like him, he's not making any more profit. So the same thing applies to hiring blacks in the South in many cases, even if they could be hired as lower wage workers, which could then potentially increase the profit of the business owners. If nobody buys from them because they're racist, then it actually has a detrimental effect, which then makes it less people likely to hire them at a lower rate because it would actually be a cost to them. So like hiring, there's a bunch of people who are considered very racist, Mel Gibson, or the guy who owned the basketball team who said something that people didn't like. If you hire him, you're going to get a lot of backlash, and the backlash can then cost you more money, even if it would have saved you to hire him, because he costs less because of people fired him or whatever. So the social detriment of hiring someone who society doesn't like could cost you more money than the amount you save by paying them less.
Well, when you say the economy will be better, I'm not clear how and why the economy can be better. I mean, the economy, I'm not against the word the economy. It's a good
nomenclature.
It's good nomenclature, but we have to be careful with that because really what the economy consists of is a bunch of individuals. So suppose that black people get paid 3/4 of what they would otherwise get were there no discrimination. Why would that hurt the economy? It would hurt blacks, I'll concede. It would help white racists. But how do you deduce from that it hurts the economy?
The people discriminate against blacks. It hurts the economy because it makes less money go into the lower levels of the economy, which drives the economy, because the economy is kind of like a forest, a rainforest, where you get water goes in a river and then gets absorbed into the soil and then absorbed into the trees, and then the trees then make leaves, and the leaves fertilize the ground. And so putting more money into the lower levels of the economy stimulates economic growth. So if we put more money into the lower levels, it grows the economy faster. This is something we've seen in the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, which the government gives anybody who earns less than $5,000, just doubles their income or whatever. If you insert more money into the lower levels of the economy, it generates a significant amount of economic growth. And so by having things like the minimum wage or discrimination laws and letting people work there, it produces a significant amount of economic growth that wouldn't otherwise be there.
The minimum wage creates economic growth?
Yes.
Oy vey. That's Jewish for "oh, whoa."
I'm familiar.
I don't think the minimum wage law really helps people. Wow, that's interesting. That you would say that. This just I find great problems with that, and I also find great problems with taking money from the rich people and giving it to the poor people, and somehow that helps the economy. Maybe a better analogy for you would be, instead of the forest and the water, would be a pyramid, or what do you call it, a triangle.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And what you're saying is the bottom is more important than the top, and if you help the bottom, it'll help the top. That might be a better analogy for you the next time you use this, but I don't know if it'll help you, but I say that to help you out. But I don't think that if you take money from the rich and give it to the poor, it's going to help the economy, whatever that is. And I don't think it's going to help average productivity or average earnings or the GDP. I think it'll hurt. There are all sorts of cases. Bjorn Borg was a Swedish. You're a fan of Sweden. He was a Swedish tennis star, and they had I think 110% tax rate. Namely, if Bjorn Borg made $1 million, they would tax him 1.1 million. So what he did is he moved to Monaco, and then you have Gerard Depardieu, a French actor.
Well, wait, I'm not following your point there. So I agree. Yes, if you tax so much that they can make no money, that's terrible. I totally agree there, but I'm not following, because like the example I gave of was the earned income tax credit, which is literally taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor. And that had a huge benefit to the economy. So I'm not seeing why you would say that's a bad thing.
Well, when you say it had a good effect on the economy, what you're really saying is we had this EITC and then the economy grew. But what do you call it? Constant conjunction, or A precedes B, doesn't mean that A caused B.
Correspondence versus causation. Causation versus correspondence.
Right. I think we really have to talk about causation, and all you're talking about is correspondence, namely A preceded B. You can't deduce from that A helped B. B could have increased despite A, and I think that that's true. And I'm trying to give you examples. It's true, dramatic examples of very high taxation. But even if you have moderate taxation, you take money from the rich, and they work less or they emigrate, and you give money to the poor. Are you familiar with Charles Murray's book?
Yes,
Losing
Bell Curve.
Ground?
Oh, yes.
No, not the Bell Curve. Losing Ground.
Yep.
What he said is the Great Society of LBJ in '65 really pumped up welfare, and what it did is it ruined the black family. Before, and not just the black family, the white family too, but the black family is more vulnerable because they were poorer and they were more vulnerable to this stuffing money down their throats. It just broke up the black family. Before 1960, the black family and the white family were just roughly similar. The white family was 2% more together than the white family. But now 3/4 of black kids are brought up with no father in the family. No father in the household. And Charles Murray, I think, correctly attributes this causally to stuffing money down the throats of the poor. So I think that you're on the wrong track when you say it's going to be helpful to take money from the rich and give it to the poor. It means the rich work less hard or they emigrate, and the poor lose their incentive to earn income because if they earn the income, they're not going to get the subsidy. So I think that's a very bad thing. And I share your goal to help the poor. And the minimum wage, I don't know. I spend a lot of time in my intro to economics classes saying why the minimum wage law is no good. Look, a lot of people think that you have to ask what determines wages in the first place. And a lot of people who are favoring the minimum wage, they almost think that what determines wages is generosity of the employer. And the employer is a skinflint, and he's going to try to, lower the wage, and we have to do is raise the minimum wage. That's not what determines wages. The reason LeBron James makes a lot of money is not because he's got a nice employer. And the reason somebody who asks if you want fries with that makes a low wage, not because McDonald's is skinflint, it's because of productivity. And productivity doesn't change when the law changes. So if my productivity is $10 an hour and the minimum wage law is 15, Does that mean that my wage goes from 10 to 15? No, it means that I'm unemployed. The unemployment rate of Black teenage kids is quadruple the unemployment rate of white middle-class people. And before the advent of the minimum wage, there was no such divergence between the unemployment rate of people with low productivity and high productivity. See, a lot of people think the minimum wage law is sort of like a floor, you raise it and wages rise. No, it's more like a barrier over which you have to jump to get a job, and the higher it is, the harder it is to jump over it. Look, if the minimum wage law is so great, why don't we make a minimum wage of $1,000 an hour? Well, $1,000 an hour, nobody be employed. We'd all die. You probably also favor what do you call it? Foreign aid to foreign countries that are very poor.
Well, to be clear, I'm not. I think there's a better solution than a minimum wage. So I'm not for the minimum wage, but I think it's better than laissez-faire capitalism.
But I thought you favored the minimum wage.
Over laissez-faire capitalism, it's better, but there's an even better solution. But well, to bring up your point,
how can it be better if it unemploys the poor people? I mean, let's stop foreign aid and tell poor countries, hey, no more foreign aid, just raise your minimum wage, you'll be rich. Oh. This is highly problematic economics.
Right. I agree. So, but there's two factors in the minimum wage. One is, like you mentioned, the productivity, and the second is the availability of workers. So the more workers you have, availability, the more competition for prices there is, and you can pay them less if there's more workers because they need more money. So in China, you can pay people 5 cents a day because there's billions of workers and they need the money, and so somebody's willing to work for it. And that's more that drives the price of the minimum wage down, or the price of labor down. And if employers can get away with using labor for a very low cost and make a huge profit off of that, they're going to do it, because the two factors there is, what is the minimum required, or how much income does this work produce, and what is the lowest you can pay to get them to do the labor. Those two factors are what determine how much someone is paid. And if we look at countries that have the highest minimum wage, like, I agree, America's stupid. America's totally stupid. The way they do things is absolutely garbage. And I totally agree with many of the libertarian policies of how stupid America is. But if we look at other countries that have a large minimum wage, they don't have this problem. They don't have massive unemployment problems. They don't have large communities of African Americans who are unemployed, like Australia, Luxembourg, New Zealand. They have the highest minimum wage ever, and they have half of the unemployment of America. They don't have this problem, because even though some jobs get priced out of being useful, other jobs are created, because when you give money to lower income people, they have more to spend. And if they have more to spend, that means that the things that people are producing that they would buy, now you need more people to produce it. You need more people to do the work to produce these things that people can buy, like computers, TVs, whatever. So now if somebody used to work as an elevator worker and they can't afford it anymore, well, this computer company now needs somebody to build their TV because they're making more TVs and selling more TVs. So this guy now gets hired as a computer producer. And so when we see the minimum wage increased in all of these other countries, other than America, because America is incredibly stupid, we don't see this massive increase in unemployment. We see a decrease in unemployment because more jobs are created, because more utilities are being produced that can then be bought by more people, which then produces more jobs.
Well, look, I'll let you get the last substantive word on this. I shot my load on minimum wage. I promised you an hour. It's about an hour now. So let me just say it's been a pleasure talking to you. A lot of times when I get into debates or conversations like this, people interrupt each other, or they just keep talking and don't let you talk. I'm very delighted to have you as my second part of my conversation.
Interlocutor?
I'm sorry?
Interlocutor?
Yeah, I think we were both gentle with each other. We didn't interrupt much. I mean, in the normal case, you do a little bit, but we allowed each other to speak, and I enjoy talking to you. The only problem with you is you're not here. We could have a beer together, and that would even be better, but this is pretty good. So thanks for having me on your show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you coming on. Really enjoyed our conversation. I'm glad to have you back sometime.
Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.
And you'll send me the results of this.
Yes, I will send you a link to this conversation. Talk to you later.
Great. Take care.
And you can just close the window, and that's all you need to do. Bye-bye.